Let's pray. Heavenly Father, we come to you to ask, Father, for your blessing and wisdom upon this meeting. We ask, Father, that we would have our hearts prepared for what you would have us to do tonight. We ask, Lord, that you would be with the Greenwell family. We lift them up in their time of grief. We ask you, God, to just be their strength. And we thank you, Father, for what Commissioner Greenwell did for Lee County and as a servant of the people. We ask, God, that you would be with those that are out there on the streets tonight working for our safety with EMS and fire and our law enforcement. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
This is a regular meeting of the Hendry County Board of County Commissioners being held Tuesday, October 14th, 2025, in the City Commission Chambers in Clewiston, Florida. In attendance are Chairperson Emma Byrd, Vice Chair Mitchell Wills, Commissioner Emery Howard, Commissioner Michael Atkinson, Commissioner Raymond Iglesias, County Administrator Jennifer Davis, County Attorney Matt Rollerson, and Deputy Clerk Sharon Congleton.
Good afternoon. Welcome to Hendry County Board of County Commissioner meeting tonight. We ask if you have a device that you silence it for me, please. And if you wish to speak, if you could fill out a card given to you by the clerk. There's nothing up for bids, consent agenda.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Wells. Second by Commissioner Howard. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion stands. But we're very short on this meeting tonight. We have an award presentation. I believe the lieutenant's going to do the award.
That's his presentation.
When you used to calling people just by lieutenant, you leave the names out every now and then. Thank you.
For those that don't know me, I'm Lieutenant Archer with the Division, which includes the schools and reports that we have for the school zones.
Dawn. There we go.
There.
So on the first slide, what they show is Hendry County from October 1st, 2024 to June 30th, 2025. The number of violations issued is 6,951. Number of violations paid is 4,547. Number of violations pending, 2,391. Number of violations contested was 13. And then it shows for number of violations contested upheld, number of violations dismissed, and number of violations issued. And on the second page there, it goes into the financial aspect. So total payments or deposits was $395,934. Number of field citations here is $3,995, $95. State of Florida, the 23% that goes to them was $91,064.94. County School District funding per state $37,512.14. 5% that goes to the school crossing guards is $19,796.72. Net disbursement to Hendry County was $19,118. Net disbursement to Ultimate was $218,742. That is essentially their annual report that they provide on the funding and the
Madam Chair, can you
Yes.
go back to that last slide, please?
Okay, she got it.
So is that a Hendry County total or a Florida state total?
That's Hendry County.
395,934.
Yes,
You've got $19,000 of that,
correct.
the rest of it.
Right there.
More to go.
It's showing you.
I know that, I see that, I'm just kind of curious, we got $400,000, we got not even 20?
Madam Chair?
Yes.
So can you clear that up? So when you say you're in the hole, I think there's a misunderstanding with the taxpayers of Hendry County thinking, so there's a $3,499 expense per month per camera. You only pay that if you have enough funds to cover that, right? So in essence, 3 years from now, there's $2 million in the hole. We walk away, we don't pay that $2 million. Okay, because. See,
Need something, we need it then.
So you're funding the signs? I haven't heard that, that's the first I've heard of that. These folks are, or you said you gotta pay for signs, so.
Well, yeah.
I understand that. Is that cost coming out of Road and Bridges budget?
Yeah, but anyway,
It
Well,
was.
that's what I'm asking, the reason I'm asking, and your flashing signs. Calm down.
I'm calm.
That's some big numbers, and I'm wanting to know, because when people call me and chew my butt out, I ain't got much butt left. And for this, I mean, I wanna make sure I understand, so when I answer them, I'm giving them correct answers. We priced 2 signs, flashing signs the other day, they're $7,500 a piece in a school zone. So I've been begging the mayor to buy them, and she finally decided that we would buy them. But she was upset because she said, it's a school zone. I said, no, I get it, but it's our road. So I've been going back and forth. So when she sees these numbers, she's gonna say the same thing I'm saying. Where's the money going? So I have to know this, so I know when I answer a question, I'm answering it correctly, so.
Yeah, we were hoping, that, we'd get enough funds to get all the school zones. But that happened. We can't enforce it.
As far as I know, all the signs are right now.
Everything should be good now.
And now.
They've been that way for several months, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, also to keep in mind, this, I know the report is from October 1st, 2024 to June 30th. Start active in our program till February. Citations were issued, started for us February 3rd.
how many, I'm sorry, Madam Chair, how many cameras? Is it 16?
16.
That's both sides of the county?
So, when they did the original study, I guess they expected to have more citations than they have, and I think what's happening is people are self-correcting. I was on Francisco and Sonora here about 2 weeks ago, and I was like, I saw all the vehicles on Sonora, and it was like immigration wasn't even in town, and everybody was going slow, and I was like, what's going on? And then I realized, because of the zone, people are just self-correcting, huh?
In fact, they're doing the school zone.
That's good.
Have people slow down and be going slow when they should, when kids are out there, as opposed to the speed limit.
Yeah, that was the sheriff's whole purpose, traffic down there. There's not enough of us to do it. Us, but,
So I got asked a little while ago, I mean, an hour before the meeting, about the flashing lights. Was it represented to us that they were going to put flashing lights, not right at the sign, but like as a warning before you got to that That was the way they understood it.
Followed, same.
At all.
Yeah, well, I was gonna say, Madam Chair, I'm sorry, I was gonna say, I understood you weren't required to have the flashing signs. As long as the times were posted, you did not have to have the flashing sign.
It would, again, it would be nice to have them just to give people. It would be nice, but as you mentioned, they are quite expensive.
Here, I got
Yeah.
2 questions. One, school districts, can they pay for some of the street signage out of these funds? And so, they're getting money. We're the last one to get anything. I don't know if it's legally possible. Maybe we can have a conversation with them to see if they'll do it. The other question, June, July, when we're out of school, we pay for these cameras?
But what you have to keep in mind as well is when tickets are issued, you have 30 days to pay them. For the citation or the events to be reviewed before they even make it to us. So even though, school ends at the end of May, some of these reviews and these tickets aren't coming to us to be reviewed until into June. Sometimes it takes a while, and a lot of that cost goes towards them. And then do those checks before it comes to us, and then mail all that stuff out.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
I've got a few more questions. No points on, sorry. You surprised me with this one on the agenda. So no points on their license, is that correct? So, but do they have to pay the ticket? Okay.
If they didn't pay, if it was me or her sitting in that school zone with a radar, and we most of them just paid it, they
On the 5% that goes to the county, Jennifer, what can that money be used for? Is it, goes back to Road and Bridge, or? No, there's a 5%
For the county, for the board side.
for crossing guard, which was my other question.
Well, our intention was, and we hadn't done it yet, and we did it some time back, and we had some conversations with the chief and also Bob Pastul, our EOC director, to create a advisory board that the board, would appoint folks to the composition of that board, and they would get together and they would make a recommendation. So it wasn't me making the recommendation. It wasn't, just county staff, that it was a group of folks from a public safety perspective to make a recommendation on what to spend those dollars for. We haven't spent any of those dollars. We just have the 19 right now. We thought we were going to get a lot more, and that could change. It may not change, but it was still our intention to come back to the board, have you all appoint the members of that advisory board and the composition. And the idea is that public safety, with the Florida statute, I don't have it right here in front of me, but it could involve Shane's department, for example, and I'm just making this up, but it could be guardrails, for example. That's a public safety improvement. There is an existing public safety type of board now, but I believe it's mostly law enforcement, fire department, EMS. And so my recommendation was to broaden that group a little bit for this purpose, to incorporate someone from Road and Bridge and maybe a couple other EOC and a couple other areas, to make sure that we're all encompassing what the statute allows those expenditures to be for. And we can do that. We've got a staff report already drafted up. We were just really kind of waiting and trying to give this program some time to see what was going to happen. We weren't in a hurry to spend any money right now. We were waiting for it to accumulate a little bit more. And then they would, the idea would be they would meet, and then they would come up with recommendations to you to spend that money, and it would come to you in the form of approval at a board meeting. So that's the way we plan on doing it.
And then you mentioned school crossing guard would be for retention, because that's got to be a hard position to fill.
What, what we had envisioned was maybe
Well, if my math's right, that program's $285,000 in the hole, which is great on our part, because our tax dollars aren't paying for it, so.
And is that?
And I would only assume that the revenue for that company would only diminish as more people got tickets, because people are gonna just slow down and self-correct as much as
That-
possible.
Let me see that, yeah, I must have looked at it wrong yesterday. If you don't mind.
It just
Sorry.
makes you, because when I go that way, I stop and think, I put my cruise control.
Well,
I thought it
at the end of the
was
day,
in the hall.
I think, if you have somebody speeding there, the chances of a kid at some point walking to school or riding their bike to school someone's on their phone, not paying attention,
that's just
boom,
for the 1 month.
takes that kid out. If it saves one life, we've done something, so.
Yep. And Madam Chair, and I do believe it is making a big impact. I see
a
it.
cumulative.
We're in
Okay.
3 of those school zones every day, just
All right.
about it.
I just want
And
to correct it for the record.
I think
Okay,
it's
thank you.
it's doing what it's supposed to do. Hopefully work ourselves out of the business.
And you get a lot of complaints, but still, they understand. And even where the speed changed on Sonora from 45 to 35. So, little things like that, they're trying to pay a little bit more attention to, because I didn't catch it. And they don't tell you that the speed changed, because it changed on Georgia, coming into Holland where it was 35 and it's 25 now. So little things like that, I think it's just gonna make us pay more attention to what's going on, so thank you so
I'm
much.
glad you reached out so I could get clarity on that camera thing, because that was I had a question about that from a few people, and so that's good.
Madam Chair,
one more
Yes.
quick point I'd like to make too. Out of the money that Alpha gives, they give us $60,000 a year back to block families.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so they're paying
Yeah. Are you adding to them or just a net?
20 additional cameras.
It's awesome.
Yeah, Madam Chair, no one's disputing the fact that they are working, for sure. Just when I opened my packet and looked at it, I'm like, Lord Jesus, that's some big numbers, and this is public record, and I'm gonna get my tail chewed more, so I just wanna be able to explain it. So,
I'm right there with you. That was terrible.
yeah.
Not what we expected at all.
I love the tickets. I mean, I had an employee from a different job, got a ticket. I said, really? In a municipality's vehicle, you got a ticket? We know you're not that big a hurry to get to work. Slow down. So, yeah. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank y'all for the
Thank you,
clarifications.
guys.
Madam,
Ms. Davis, excuse me, Ms.
just for
Davis.
clarification, Commissioner Iglesias, the cumulative number is 91,000, not 200, and so it's still 91,000, but it's not as bad.
So,
I just want to make sure for the
well, I just
record.
want to click, so let's,
Okay.
I'm just curious, so if the lease payment on the cameras, at 16 cameras at $34.99 a month, I'm coming up with $503,856 from October 1st of 2024 to June 30th.
This right here that Ian just handed out is a more detailed report based off of some monthly reports that we get from the clerk's office, and so that's how this was derived.
But
We,
this is only February to October,
Right.
not October to October.
well, what we only started at,
No, I was looking at, this number here was October to June, so.
right, but the program didn't start till February. We didn't actually start the program till February.
Okay.
Thank you. Just,
Any other questions or comments?
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Matt Rollerson, County Attorney. Also, there's been we're going to bring to the board an amendment to the ordinance because of some confusion about roads, some roads in Clewiston, which they're in the city, but they're county roads. So there was a little confusion about that, and we list the roads in there, and so it came back to me, and I said, well, that road's not listed, we can't do it until we change that. So that site, there's a site basically that's been getting citations that we're dismissing. So that should increase revenue a little bit at that point.
Thank you so much. At this time, we're going to staff reports. Ryan, I believe you're the only one that's up today.
Good evening. For the record, Ryan Alexander, Director of Planning and Community Development. This staff report is meant more of a discussion. We had talked to the board, or the board had directed staff to work on an LDC amendment to allow for temporary use of RVs while an owner-builder was building their residence. So I went in there and I went through some of the allowances. I worked with other counties and found some of their regulations for the counties that do allow it, and came up with a framework that I'd like to propose to the board. But I did have two questions before we get into the RV permit. So when we had discussed it before, and a lot of the owner-builder permits that we talked about were in Wheeler Estates, they were in Montura. Ladika isn't so much of an issue, or not an issue, but growth area. Pioneer has some. So when I started looking into it, I realized that allowing this in our medium to high density residential areas or our master plan communities might not be something that we would want. So I just need some direction as far as allowing it in A2, RR, RRF, and RRWE zoning designations, but not allowing it in Port LaBelle, Banyan Village. And then if this board had any other areas they wouldn't want this allowed, to let me know. We did carve out quite a few sections for the shipping container allowance. So I went back and pulled that language, and I do have the areas we carved out for that. Although I think it does carve out some areas that are a little bit more rural and might want this allowance. But it does provide a framework there if that's something you guys wanted to look at. So the first question is then the zoning designations, is that okay with the board if we move forward but take out Port LaBelle, Banyan Village, RR4, RR3, and those zoning designations?
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I don't know if maybe we put a 3/4 of an acre, 1 acre, a size limit on the lot. You got a half-acre lot, you can't put a camper and build the home. Start getting crammed up and not be able to do it. I think that would correct some of that. Port LaBelle, Banyan Village, and the other communities, Hooker's Point.
Okay, I can look at that and then propose something that's based on the size of the lot and not the specific zoning. And that'll open it up a little bit
That
more.
makes sense.
My biggest concerns was in the past where they wasn't doing the work. They had the RV there, but I mean, one said just laid the floor, and I think he came back with a permit from within a year, but had not moved forward. So if we do allow it, we need to make sure, I know it's a lot on code, but to make sure that at a certain period of time that if they're not doing what they need to do, they need to lose that permit, for it, so.
Madam Chair.
Okay, so, go ahead.
So that would be the correction to that. That is a 12-month permit, and after that, then code enforcement gets involved if nothing's changed, correct?
So that's, let me talk through, so I'll go to the requirements now. So what I did was I came up with a framework based on Gilchrist County and how they have allowed temporary RVs for owner builders. So I don't think it's realistic, especially with owner builders, to expect them to have some of these improvements done on the property before they're allowed to live in the RV. So I want to make sure that there is a window there where they can stay on the property in the RV while they're working towards building the home, getting some of these requirements met for safety and compatibility and things like that. So initially I'm proposing a 90-day temporary use permit. The only requirements is that they'd have to have their owner builder permit. They would have to have an approved driveway permit, so there's access for emergency services. A holding tank, that comes standard on any RV. And then also the property must be posted with the address. And something I think is important as we have these people living on these properties is that their address is posted clearly for 911 to see if there's any issues. So those would be the only requirements for that initial 90-day temporary use permit. Following on to that, though, they could come back in within the 90 days or at the end of the 90 days and request an inspection. And providing that they have, so if you skip down to the second page, a code-compliant power pole to ensure we have power safety, a septic tank with a clean out and the RV hooked up to the clean out, a well installed, and the driveway installed. I can add additional conditions in here for checks they would have to reach as far as building goes, but I felt that if we required them to have in the septic, have in the power pole, and some of these other things, that they're going to be developing the property. It wouldn't be like some of these projects we have where we come back out there in 6 to 9 months, they haven't done anything. I think once you get your septic installed, once you get your well installed, and you start moving through the process, the building will keep moving forward. Now, I can adjust this to a 6-month permit, and then at 6 months, we make sure they have a slab poured or some check within the inspection process beyond just getting them started. That's definitely an option there, Commissioner, if you guys want to add in something like that.
I like the 90 days, because what's gonna happen before they even get the permit, they know what they have to have, and that, to cause them to move forward. I just want them to be good players, that's all.
Okay.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
So on the 90 days, the only thing I would add is that they have to have a holding tank with a contract with a septic tank
Provider.
pumping service.
So,
The tank on the RV is not gonna last them very long, and they're not gonna unhook it, take it
Drive
to the
it.
campground, empty it, and bring it back. They're
so
gonna put the tank and let
yes,
it-
sir. So what we had is when I took this over last summer from the building department and tried to figure out some of the issues with it, the one thing that I found in requiring that contract, a lot of the septic tank services, we talked to Moon, I'm blanking, in LaBelle, and some of the other even porta potty services, and they won't come out for a single RV. It's just not cost effective for them. So I looked at requiring to have a porta-john out there, since we do require bathrooms on job sites. That, again, to me, is just cost restrictive for an owner builder and just adds an extra expense. But I can definitely tweak the language or talk to some other services and see if I can come up with a happy medium there between having that bi-weekly pump out and not allowing them to just go to a facility with a dump station, which is the solution that we've found temporarily right now. There's Glaze RV Resort, there's a RV park in Hooker's Point, and we just have them go to that RV park and get a letter stating they can dump there. But I understand the concern that there's no way to follow that up and ensure they do actually dump.
So, if you're a contractor, you have to have a porta potty. You
Correct.
have to sign it. So if you're an owner builder, you waive that right? They don't have to? We have to pay you.
I'm not going to definitively say that, but I will follow up on that piece of it, and I'll come back to that piece. Because I completely agree. I don't like just having that contract there that says they're going to go dump. Because you're right, they're not going to dump, unless they have an exterior tank that's on wheels, they can dump their holding tank for their RV into, take that to the dump station. I've been doing it a while, so it's a
The
pain.
hassle to unhook is to take it
Yeah,
and dump
so
it.
it's just not going to happen, and they're going to dump it somewhere or on their property or dig a hole, and that's what we're trying to avoid. So I can definitely try to reach back out and see if I can come up with a better solution for the holding tank. The thing is, for the holding tank, though, that's only a 90-day allowance. Once they get past that 90 days, they have to have the septic installed and they have to be hooked up to the clean out. So it's not like right now where we have 6 months of them, they could be dumping it somewhere. I think the 90 days holds them to that. And then once they get that septic in, they're going right into the clean out, then that solves that issue. But I'll dig into it a little bit more and try to come up with a better solution, because I agree, there's no follow-up there or any way to really guarantee that they're actually doing it.
Look at that, the porta potty on permits,
Okay.
owner builders, contractors, all of them.
The-
Other thing would be the 12 months. It would be 12 months with administrative approval for 6 months. So it'd be 18 months total, I would think, and then it's done. House is
Okay.
finished or not.
My thought on that was do them in 6-month intervals, just so that there's progress being made. I don't know how many times I get phone calls and they come up with I got a health issue, or I've been saving money or whatever the issue is. And then if you give them 1 year out of the gate and then 1 6-month renewal, that might be too late for them to finish up. I'd like to kind of warn them after that first 6 months, hey, this is it. You got 2 more and you're done.
So you
Just a
have the-
thought.
You have the 12-month, but you want them to bring it back within 6 months prior.
6 months at a time.
that
So,
time.
So not issuing a 12-month permit, issuing a 6-month
right.
Okay.
And then
Max
the
of
maximum is 18 months.
for a max of 18.
The only other thing I thought on the septic tank was to close out a roof permit, we have to provide proof that we dumped within the county and provide a receipt. So, I mean, if we're only looking at septic issue for 90 days, they can show, and I don't know how much use they're gonna have in the holding tank, but provide a receipt showing that they took it to, Glades RV or whatever, just a thought.
Okay, yeah, same as we do for waste receipts, just
Right.
have dump receipts. Okay. piece, I'm still working. So the trash collection piece, I'm still working on with Tommy. We've been going back and forth trying to come up with a good solution, and we don't have a good solution yet. So I will be coming back with that piece of it at some point. I need to meet with Jennifer Barron and Tommy, and we need to keep working through that piece of it to make sure we have checks in place to where they're not just getting it in perpetuity. But it also seems like a lot of them, right now, what they're doing is just putting it out by the curb and it's being picked up, and they're not paying for any services at all.
And that's a bad deal for Montour, or they'll or Pioneer, Ladika, they'll just ride down a dirt road and dump it. So that's another issue.
Madam Chair, so maybe it's a situation, Commissioners, where you require them to have a dumpster on site. Like no different than a construction company unless they
That's what-
own one. But that would kind of take away from that.
So what are we required for on a contractor to do? Can they self-haul?
They can self-haul as long as they provide receipts from the county hauler. And that's another issue we've run into is enforcing that. But yes, they can self-haul and just provide seats from the county dump.
Madam Chair, and you have to have a minimum capacity, right, on the,
For the roll-off or the dumpster
right,
on site, yes.
right.
That would help ensure they're taking their garbage to their proper places, though.
I agree with you.
You got a lot of debris when you're building a home, so you guys know that, you build them all the time, so.
The
There's gotta be
biggest problem,
some kind of paper trail to show they're actually disposing of it properly.
Something in between having a roll-off and just can service. If I can find a.
At least
a
they're
medium
held to the
between.
same standards as contractors are. Contractors have to have that on site. So if they're gonna own a builder, that's fine, but you still have to provide that on site with your project.
And I'm assuming
Chair.
on the permit, it'll mention something if a storm's coming, that they're responsible for.
Secure and everything.
Right.
Thank you.
Correct. So I worked with Bob. One thing, before we get off the dumpster issue, one of the things I'll have to work with Debbie and Judson and make sure there aren't restrictions within Florida Building Code or statutes for what we can require from an owner builder. So I will follow up on that piece for the dumpster. Oh, we can't.
And mixed waste, they have to separate
Please,
it.
we're
You'll
gonna
have to
keep
come to the.
plugging away on the solid waste issue. So I worked with Bob, and I have language in here that in the event of a declaration of emergency for a named storm in Hendry County, the temporary RV permit shall be suspended. Per Hendry County Emergency Management Guidance, all temporary use permits shall be suspended, and the RV shall not be inhabited during or prior to the projected landfall. All provisions for temporary living in an RV during reconstruction after a storm shall be determined by the state, and that's going to come down from the state. So having that provision in there, so we're not going contrary to any state guidance, but ensuring that the RVs are not inhabited during a named storm is built into the permit.
Well, Madam Chair, we're discussing more of, if you got a roof going on, you got a stack of plywood on the roof, it needs to be secured. So it's actually materials on site that's being secured for the storm, not actually the RV itself, but your building materials need to be
Trash, yeah.
secured, right?
I believe they signed the same papers as a contractor does to keep the job site clean, but I'll follow up on that and see if it's part of the owner-builder contract.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments?
No, ma'am.
Thank you, Ryan.
Thank you, Ryan.
Thank you.
And real quick, while I'm up here, we have a lot of projects, and I sent out a project list this past week across Hendry County.
Thank you.
Please, as you guys review that list, reach out to me if you have any questions. I did a report today, and in western Hendry County, we are close to 47 homes that are either in entitlement or asking for entitlements. So it's a large chunk of residential units that are being proposed or working towards development in western Hendry County. So as you guys view that, and as you guys see some of these projects come on board, please reach out to me, give me some input. I'm not a Hendry County native, so that I appreciate the input from people that have been here and have seen the county from its roots all the way until now as we're growing.
You said 4,700.
4,700, yes.
And then we're working on a map, and we're still working on that, right?
Yes, so I will have a map shortly. It's pretty close to being done. You can go onto it just like our GIS maps. It'll have highlighted each parcel that has a zoning or comp plan or any kind of development working at the time. You can click on it and see what it's at and see where it's at. It'll be easy as we get in new applications, I can just send the property ID over and they can update it, and so we'll get that going. Here,
Nice.
hopefully, as we get the new website going as well, we can integrate that in there.
And we've also done that for impact fees, and I think we've got that one completed.
Impact
So
fee
have
map
I-
is complete, yes.
Did I send you guys that
Yes.
one? Okay, all right, I was making sure.
Madam Chair, Ryan, before you leave, question, Shane, for you and Ryan together. We have the Western Henry County overlay. Have we done anything as far as an overlay on drainage, the impact that all these developments are gonna bring into the existing area and the areas that they're developing? Have we done anything on that to say, when you come in, you shall provide flow here, flow there, so we're not flooding existing people living here, and one development's not causing problems for the next development, that keeps piling up? Have we got anything in place like that, or is there something that we can look into putting in place like that?
I could mumble through this, but Shane is the expert
Yep.
here, so I will let him.
Expert,
No,
nice.
I'm not expert, but okay, we don't have anything in the code book that says Western Henry County, there's a plan or nothing, but one rezone that came up was the Banana Branch PUD. When that one came in, we asked, because a lot of residents in the Murray Road section was concerned about, they alleged the Paul family was flooding them out or whatever, and they're concerned if it developed. And the board approved in that PUD language that said they have to accommodate off-site flows. And Mr. Paul, the Paul family, they said they would give the county an easement
Right.
across some drainage ditches, ones that help move flow, but one right across the north side. As PUDs come in and we're reviewing, we're asking that they accommodate off-site flows. We reviewed one here recently and made the same comment. It was next to Phillips Road. You have to accommodate, you cannot just build your berm right next to their backyards, because in that section, it wasn't an improved subdivision. It's just little 5-acre tracts that were cut up. You may have filled one in, you did, and you did, you did. And then it doesn't sheet flow. It's already a tabletop anyway. So if they can provide some room on their property to let that water flow north would be great and hit the natural flows. But that's what we're doing on our end, just making sure they're accommodating drainage.
And that's the reason I'm asking, because there's a lot of development coming. I mean, on 80, it's unreal. Out west to wherever all the stuff they're coming into right now, we already have drainage issues in several of these areas. So I just want to make sure that, and here's the thing, I don't want us to get stuck in another Senate Bill 180 deal where we can't change anything.
Right.
That way, when they come in, they say, well, we don't have to do that. We don't have to worry about your drainage, that's your problem. If we need to get ahead of that with language, is the reason I'm asking tonight. If we have to get ahead of that, so we're not stuck in this situation again, that's what I'm asking about. Is there something we can put in place so down the road, say they decide to change their mind again in Tallahassee, we're not stuck here with some mess that they created? Is the reason I'm asking these questions.
Madam Chair.
Just a minute. Matt.
And I'll take a look at how that would be compatible if we're gonna implement that with those preemptions. But there's also from a legal perspective, they're not immune from liability if they're a nuisance to their neighbors. I mean, so it's not, we'll control it the best we can, but if you're talking about adjacent property owners, adjacent property owners' rights don't go away because they got a development. So it's, that's kind of built into law. So that's a liability issue. I mean, that's where the leverage comes in. Well, it's our leverage also, but say, if you cause this, it's gonna be a problem. We're gonna have compliance requirements, but it's up to them to make sure that they don't, their development is not a nuisance to their neighbors.
And I understand that. I fully understand that, but I do understand developers too. They're gonna push the limit. And if we don't have some sort of limit somewhere, they're gonna come in and, here's the thing, we're growing. No one likes it. None of us like the ideal of LaBelle or Clewiston, neither one being Naples. If I wanted to live in Naples, I'd move there. But the fact is, we wanna hold them to the same standards here. When they come to LaBelle, when they make these new developments, they should look just as nice as the development they're building on the coast. I don't care if just cause it's Hendry County, they'll say, I've been told this personally, I've been told this. Well, this isn't Collier County. Well, I don't care. You're gonna come in here and spend just as much time and excellence on this project that you did down there, or I don't even care to see you come in here. And everybody's like, well, you can't tell them that. Well, I'm telling them that. And from a personal position, that's where I am. And right now, it's frustrating because of Senate Bill 180. We're kind of stuck in a rock and a hard place. And I just don't want to see I don't want to see the people of Hendry County be in that situation, because the coast are coming. It's facts, they're coming. So I want to make sure somehow we're protecting the people that live here and have lived here for 100 years.
I've spoke outside the meeting, but there's a lot of opposition to Senate Bill 180. There's been multiple municipalities and counties have joined in a lawsuit.
I was gonna
if
ask
the board,
that
if the
during
board
business.
was inclined to join that lawsuit, we're happy to do that as well. it's a pretty daunting preemption. I would be shocked if, I think there's a real chance that their lawsuit will prevail, and even lacking that, I think there's going to be enough heat that they're going to take a hard look at this legislation. I just don't think this is it's excessive, it's far-reaching, it's overreach. And if the problem with that language is that it's ongoing now, it's continuing, and then if a storm comes within 100 miles, then we're stuck again. It could go on forever, for 50 years, and that's just it's absurd on its face. And you could have language, and Ryan and I were talking about this, about the concern is allowing people whose homes are damaged by a storm to redevelop without onerous regulation. But you could carve that. I mean, you could. That's not new development, right?
Right.
I mean, so that's existing development or redevelopment. So there's ways to deal with that in statutory language without preempting us about doing anything with the code forever. So I'm hopeful that that'll get addressed. But again, I'm happy to join in if the board's inclined to do that. I think it is onerous and sort of absurd the way this was structured. And it's a part of the problems with the bill is that constitutionally it's a mishmash of all kinds of things. This title doesn't really reflect what it's about. It's about 100 different things. There's some constitutional impediments to it that could easily be viewed as a court as unconstitutional.
I was gonna go there tonight, so when we get all said and done, we can visit that, because my opinion is, yes, we do. We need to make as much as everyone else, let them know that we're not happy with it either, and we need to join. That's my opinion, but there's 5 of us, so we can talk about that.
Commissioner Howard.
Shane, back to the one development we were talking about. Do I remember correctly, you said we could condition that off-site
What we
improvement?
did in previous rezones in the planned unit development for the Banana Branch, we made that a condition. And then in this recent rezone review, I made a stipulation that they have to accommodate them because I didn't like their conceptual layout. I was worried about Phillips Road being impacted. And then we got another rezone that'll be a comment coming too that would piggyback on with what the Paul family's doing. And then we're also, when we're looking at floodways, flowways to make sure that they're not impacting the floodplain. We got an actual ordinance on that just to make sure, especially on lot splits. Ryan's real good about that.
So we're able to
You can make
take
it a-
care of that one angle to this, correct?
You can in the rezone.
Yeah. Okay. And Madam Chair, along with that, I look forward to another discussion a little deeper. It's not just drainage. Density is a big deal. It's a big deal to me. I don't like what I see coming, and I will hope we can find some way to manage that growth with the density, because it's excessive, in my opinion.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
To add to that, I talked to Ryan first of the week, or last week, with that 460 acres that got brought up on Facebook in the petition that was approved years ago. Do y'all take that into consideration for traffic and everything else? If quarter mile down the road, they want to come develop, well, you already rezoned 1,300 homes there. Do you take that into consideration?
For traffic,
Traffic?
no, because the
Water flow,
traffic
everything.
wasn't, they're not vested. Some of those PUDs, they've been in place before I started with the county, 19 and a half years, and they're still raw. You don't get your trips vested until it's actual time you get your site plan approved. That's when you get your trips vested. But we do look at, like I coordinate with Ryan, I want to see all the master concept plans for all the PUDs, like on Fortinode Road. So when I'm reviewing from an engineering perspective, are there concept plans lining up with the other road connections, just making sure everything's lining up and looking at it from that perspective.
So I guess the other thing in the future, because I wasn't on the board when that was approved, so it was news to me. When we get something within a mile of another development that was rezoned prior, can you add that to the new rezone just as information? That there's more developments that
Proximity
was
with-
already rezoned?
Yeah, so like Shane was saying, a lot of the allowances might be in place, but they don't have vested, I don't know if rights is the right word, but they still have to come back. So let's say the Paul PUD, if they came in tomorrow and wanted to develop, we would still go through the site development phase or the plating phase where they would have to redo their traffic impact statement. They'd have to redo their environmentals. They'd have to redo quite a few different studies as part of that. And part of that too, especially with those older PUDs, I would be looking at existing developments or new developments we have coming online. And as they come online, it's really the first person up, and then the last person ends up paying for it, and that goes over to the level of service. But for those PUDs, no, it would be working through them, making sure that they're compatible, especially in that area. Like you have Brandywine, you have the Paul PUD, you have Moore River Groves, Casa Biscayne. I mean, they're all working, coming out into the same road. And so that is something I look at regionally, and especially in the Western Henry planning area as we're working through those. I also wanted to go back to Commissioner Wills. So every development we have, and I pulled up the Paul PUD that we have. So the future development of this site must accommodate off-site flows from the north and east to restore historic flows and to avoid or minimize flooding to the Murray Road MSBU. So in that condition, we're not even looking at the on-site. That's a condition that's farther on there. We're even talking about the historic flows and making sure they're part of the plans to minimize the flooding. And then further on, we talked about, we do have 155 in our LDC, talks about resource protection, and part of that has flood damage protection. And so another condition states that the developer must comply with Chapter 155 of the Land Development Code in order to prevent flooding of properties on site and off site at time of the construction plan or site development plan. So through the PUD, if they get those entitlements and then they came back at a later time and things had happened beside them or around the property, they would still have to go in as part of that site development plan and prove that they're not going to cause adverse flooding to neighboring properties. So everything kind of builds on each other, and we might not be able to require it now, but down the road as they're working through the process, the same as we're not allowed to withhold permit approvals based on state and other agencies' approvals, but all that works in there with South Florida Water Management District, DEP. Everybody has their fingers in it at some point, and then we take all that in the actual construction phase and put it all together. So there's a lot of steps, and as they're developing, especially in that area, we're paying attention to what's going on with other properties and entitlements to make sure that we're looking at, even so far as talking to South Florida Water Management about C-43 and impacts over there. We're just looking at the big picture there and working through each of those different pieces.
So, Madam Chair, with all that being said, you and I had this conversation in your office, but I wanted to bring it back tonight because we can't talk to each other about it. But now that we're sitting here, and we ain't no hurry, I don't think, we got time, meetings kind of dwindling down. There's a conversation I want to have when it comes to all the older PUDs, whatever the case may be. As these new developments come online, commissioners, what my focus here is, let's make sure that the new development's paying for new development, number one. Number two, it's not adding more strain on resources that we don't already have. As far as recreation, I believe if you're gonna have 1,300 homes, you need to provide recreation in there. And I don't mean one playground. My opinion with that is every 50 to homes, whatever, that playground, that area. I believe that it should have our interior roads to where it's not so much of an impact on all of your roads around you. They should be able to move through these developments without impacting that. Let's use 14 Road for an example. You have 4 different ones coming to that. If each one of them only has 2, well, that's not too bad. But if you access every 2 or 3 miles down the road, now we're just making an issue worse than it is. So I want to see interior roads built in these. And I don't know legally what we got to stand on other than the fact that we're going to stand here and say, hey, you know, you're coming into our community, you're going to impact our people, but this is how we're going to expect you to do it. So I believe there should be some kind of on-site retail. They shouldn't have to run down to Walmart and Winn-Dixie every time they need a gallon of milk or a loaf of bread. Yeah. They should be able to stay on site and do these things. And this amount of homes, one project's only 391 homes. That's a lot of homes.
Yeah.
So if you do 1 vehicle a day, now you got a mom and a dad lives in there, you got 2 vehicles a day. And if they got a rugrat that's old enough to drive, now you got 3 to 4 vehicles a day. And it just compounds. So I believe going forward, I mean, the folks that put us here to represent them expect us to have their best interests in mind. And just, you know, these developers, they're looking at the dollar. I'm looking at the people I got to look at day in and day out to say, hey, I'm going to do the best I can to make sure they're safe. They look very nice. They accommodate the recreation, because we don't have parks, we don't have pools, we don't have all that. Yes, they're gonna provide some sort of emergency services, whether it's a house to have an ambulance or a fire truck. Ryan and I had this conversation, but we can't talk, so I want you guys to hear it tonight. That's where I'm at when all this new development's coming. I want to make sure that it's not a bad impact on the people of Hendry County.
Madam Chair, and I am right there with you. The same thing, like I said, the density really, really concerns me. And we have to be able to manage this. But here's the question, Mr. Rollerson. It was great that I appreciate the map that you put together, showing us all the PUDs that have been approved and new ones coming in. But when we have a new applicant coming before us, can we use as part of clear and convincing evidence in that hearing a prior approved PUD that the two together would be an impossible impact to handle?
Well, it's, consistency is an issue, but that may be, their argument may be that, well, you approve that 1,300 unit PUD, and I'm only asking for 400 unit PUD. So, all those areas where, we're going to be mindful, of course, moving forward about what we need to do to make sure that if we're not inclined to approve a project, that we have competent, substantial, sufficient evidence presented, and we will be prepared to defend any claims otherwise to that. I do want to say that and this is just a legal terminology, when they got these older PUDs, they do have vested rights. They have land use rights, but that doesn't exempt them from adhering to our requirements and the requirements of the code with respect to all these different areas: their site development plan, flooding, roads, driveways, access to their, how they're going to access their property, et cetera, those types of things. And I think staff looks at, I know at least one development Ryan and I recently talked about, there is commercial on the front end, there's things like that, so they're self-supporting. I mean, I think the development wants to do that. I mean, that's part of it, because it maximizes their value, so, because they get both.
I know some we've looked at didn't have no commercial components at all. It was just home, 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 home. The one, we looked at the same one, I'm sure, because it has a commercial in the front, and we discussed that. And that's something that I believe every one of them needs to have that component built into it. Again, LaBelle's small. We know we have enough congestion in town now. If they need to come across the river, we got to figure a way to get them across the river. It's a conversation you and I had. All the homes going on 78, that's a lot when you start adding those numbers up. I don't remember the exact number that you told me.
Almost
but just between-
1,400.
Yeah, and that's a major impact. So, we got to have some kind of services across there. And then again, we looked at it. You got a wastewater treatment plant in the very front of the project. That's horrible. People are going to drive by. We're going to see that every day. It's horrible. Then it's right in someone's backyard where they live. That's horrible. I mean, there's got to be somewhere on these somewhere in these areas where we can say, hey, we don't like that. We need to work out somewhere else to move that. I'll give you guys the berm, your buffers. A chain link's not a buffer to me. I want to see a raised buffer with a fence on top of it, with foliage, beautiful decorative plants, trees. I don't want to see your house. And when I drive down the road, I want to look and see a beautiful complex, like I see when I go down Corkscrew in the middle of nowhere. Beautiful. You don't see anything. When you drive into Fort Myers River Hall, you see a beautiful fire department sitting there. When I go out to my son that lives out at Babcock, you don't see all that. They got 2 ways in of all them people out there, and there's so many people. 2 ways in. And they're working on another, I know. But I just want to be mindful of the things that's coming to Hendry County. That's the kind of projects we should be holding them to. We shouldn't let them come in here and build. I don't want to be like Lehigh. And if somebody's from Lehigh, don't be offended if you are, pray about it. And I don't want to be Cape Coral. I mean, I just don't want to be Cape Coral either. I mean, I want our neighborhoods to be very nice. And
But, and you're right, and to go with that, you have to master plan this.
You do.
Shane and I had talked about master plan and drainage, and he has one, although it needs to be drilled down to some detail for especially Western Hendry County. But if we don't do this, they're gonna build anything and everything, and then we have no way to get out of it.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Ryan. Shane, thank you.
Ryan.
Thank you,
Madam
Ryan.
Chair, back to my comment. I guess what my question was, can you bring those that were already approved just for information? Because to me, when we approved Murphy's Landing, that was 460 acres of cow pasture to me. I didn't know it had a PUD. So I think for us just to have refreshed information that it does have a PUD and it's not just a vacant piece of land.
So
I know they don't have, a site plan and ready to build, but at least gives us some refreshed information.
part of the submittal requirements for a rezone or comp plan amendment is to have a location map showing the surrounding zoning. So what I'll do is I'll drill into that a little bit more and have some more information as part of that area map. That way, when you're looking at it, it doesn't just say PUD, it says PUD and then references what that PUD is. That way we can look at it and appropriately look at the surrounding area and what the entitlements are and how it could develop in the future.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ryan. Any other comments? This is a public hearing. Anyone from the public wishes to speak at this time? Thank you so much. Next, we have old business. District by district.
Jennifer, on your administrative briefing that you sent out the other day, you mentioned that in the inmate medical, that the inmates actually have to opt in.
So, Chief is here. He might have more information than I do. We have a meeting scheduled to talk about it with the provider. So there was a change in the rule from the time that we originally signed up for the program and now. I just learned about it myself. We have an interlocal agreement with the Sheriff's Department and the Clerk's Office for inmate medical bills. Anything over, I think, $2,500, I have to look at it and sign it. So got a large bill in, and so when we do that, I have Tracy call over to the Sheriff's Department and say, hey, what's going on with this? Why wasn't this, person signed up for our inmate medical, or there could be many reasons why. But we look into that, and the answer came back that they didn't opt in. I'm like, what do you mean they didn't opt in? And so they all have to opt in. I thought that's what we were doing. So that's how we came upon this. And so there was a rule change, a Medicaid rule change or something like that is my understanding. We do have a meeting, I think later this week. I think it's next week, on the 21st, to be able to get more information, to be able to share with you, because it changed from the time that we signed everybody up. When we got it, they signed everybody up. That was eligible. Not everybody's eligible. I think if they're in sentencing or something like that, they're not eligible anyway. And so it went for a certain period of time. Not to say that people aren't still signing up, but you can't force them to sign up, is our understanding now. And so there are some folks that are falling through the cracks. And so that's no different than our obligation we've always had. And we still have the Sheriff's Office has a provider that does, so that large bill I was talking about, it was still negotiated way down from what it would have been. So they still have somebody that does that for all those bills, anything over 10,000 or something like that. They work to, or maybe we decreased it to 5,000, I think. So they still work really hard to try to get those medical bills reduced. But we'll share more information after we have that.
I'm just curious what their reasoning would be not to opt in. I mean, hey, do you want insurance or you don't? It doesn't cost you anything. I mean, like.
Yeah,
Don't cost them anything anyway.
yeah. Twist their arm really hard.
Evan Nelson, Sheriff's Office. From what I could figure out with this thing, when we initially started this, we considered the arrest a qualifying event, and we were sending them in. And then this rule change came down and said the arrest is not. So we can only sign them up as they get released. So everybody that gets released gets signed up. But they are trying to get a rule change back to a qualifying event as an arrest, because it is. Should be
Now, if they got signed up as they were released and then they visited you again,
then they're covered.
then they would be covered.
Yeah, that's completely
Quite a bit.
different than the way it started.
Yeah, it's because of that one rule change there, and but they're trying to get back into the government to change all that back. Yeah, because people are falling through the cracks.
Yeah.
All right, also on the mental health incubator site, I know that we're going to staff positions using that opioid one, but I'm just curious, how long is that going to sustain that position or those positions?
Quite some time. I think it's 18 years right now. There's 2 or 3 different sources as well that we have going on. We can get you a more detailed report. Ian's got that information. We have the opioid, the settlement money, and then we've got some other pots of money that came. It's opioid money, but it came via different agencies to Hendry County. One of those is one of the programs that Chief Stafford came and spoke about a while back through EMS, and then some other things. But we've got a pretty good revenue source for 18 years that we ran the numbers and felt confident that we could fund these positions without any issue. So it won't cost the local taxpayer dollars anything for at least 18 years, I believe would be the correct answer.
All right, good. And then my last question, Shane, how are you coming along on the RFP for waste, Holland? Okay, all right. We want to focus on that, make sure that we don't miss that boat. Again, have to renew it for another year. I know Tommy's looking forward to seeing what options there are out there. That's all I got.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, I don't have anything.
Mr. Nelson, quick question. You don't have to answer it tonight. I'm not going to throw you on the bus, but I'm just curious. And at one point we was talking about the capacity of the jail and how it was. I haven't been in those meetings in a while, so I'm just curious. Is that leveled off? Is it still spiked? Or, if you could let me know, please, sir. And I was actually given some information that I'd like to talk to you. Maybe later in the week if you get 5-10 minutes. A couple questions on that. So, and that, Madam Chair, that's really it. Thank you.
Commissioner?
Mailboxes in Montura. I know y'all had a meeting with them. Has there been anything new
Not since
with
that.
them?
Not since that meeting.
Okay, because I went to the Central County meeting last month, and the board spoke, and they did say that if you build a new facility, that the post office has to sign off on it, or they won't deliver mail to it. So I don't know if the local post office, or if it's Washington.
Jane, do you know the answer to that? Is it the local postmaster? I would assume it would be the local postmaster. I mean, they were very accommodating as far from a staff perspective. Of course, they said it would have to go to their board, no different than what we have to do. But we talked about a site, and we talked about where we could expand it into the parking lot, and we got an understanding of what that looked like. That was not an issue for them. Of course, we have to formalize it into some kind of interlocal. We talked about, in doing that, it would, for them to allow us to expand where their current site is, and to accommodate. I think Jim was still working on some fine tuning that plan from the number of boxes and the whole, so he's still working on that. But then we talked about their staff, because they're there, that they would be the ones to maintain the facility. They would collect the fee for the boxes and issue the keys for the boxes and that type of thing, and that we would have an interlocal where they would collect it, and then they would submit it back to you, the county, because you're going to have an investment on the facility itself, and that's what's going to come back and pay the county back for the investment that they make. They could keep a administrative fee for doing that. That would cover their cost of whoever was assigned for that, and also whatever cost it would be to keep the facility clean and that kind of thing. And they seem very open to that. So I was very hopeful. I thought it was a very positive conversation. So we were just waiting on getting the details of the actual facility. And then the boxes themselves, I think, have to be approved, if you will, from the postmaster. And so that I hope that soon we'll have something to bring back to you for you to give us the final green light to start construction.
All of the board wanted to move forward.
Okay, good.
They told the manager to work with the county to make it happen. They talked about moving it, I said, well, if you move it, now the cost of it goes up, because now you gotta have new parking, you gotta have,
Right.
all these other things, where if you put it where it's at now, you've already got parking you can utilize.
We were gonna
So-
actually expand it into the parking lot, is what we talked about.
But towards the clubhouse, right.
Well,
And what's
yeah.
back there? They have, is it a leach field they have?
And a few of the board members, last month was talking about moving it behind over by the basketball court on the back side of the parking lot.
Yeah, yeah,
That was one of the board members'
okay.
ideas. So that's what I told him. I said, there's just a lot of conversations that's gotta happen of who's responsible for what, where it's going, what it actually costs.
Well, that's good, though, that their board overall was favorable to our preliminary kind of proposal. So we can then work on putting together a MOU or interlocal, whatever Matt thinks is appropriate. And we can start working through those points while Jim is finishing up what needs to happen. And then once that gets executed, then that would give us the permission to actually, go out there and build the facility and repair the existing one or rehab it, whatever we're doing.
And then, Ladika, are we any closer to getting concrete and boxes out there?
Oquito, we're a little bit closer. We requested HL and Bennett come by and stake our actual right-of-way line with a couple PK nail and disc, so we actually know what we're dealing with. And then Jim's still working with the postmaster to figure out how many boxes. What I'm thinking we may be able to do is once we get that line actually staked out by HL Bennett, I'm thinking we might be able to put one set of boxes facing the travel lane and then put another set opposite them. So if you walk behind it, you can just double them up. I think we may have enough room, but we need the dimensions of the mailboxes.
And
But-
is the new postmaster
I don't
better than the,
know if they even got a new
Previous.
postmaster yet. I haven't heard from them.
I was
It's gotta
told
be
they
better
got a
than the
new
last one.
Told they had a new one, that he was here. I've reached out, and they said once he got in the position and situated, he would reach out, but that might take a while to clean up the old mess.
That's it?
That's it.
Thank you. Shane, how close are we with the Georgia Avenue? What's the timeline?
That's a good
You
question. I
gotta
don't know.
have a smile on your face, Shane.
Well, you just approved the budget. We're supposed to be figuring out whether we want to do a loan and administration's looking at a different financing option, so we don't have to borrow all the money at one time and be paying interest because the projects are all coming at different times. So I don't remember the organization's name, but somebody at FAC.
It's the FAC financing mechanism for many, many years. They've talked to probably all of you and me about using their financing source. Typically, they have lower rates and they have more, it's more like a credit line kind of thing. As part of your budget approval, you approved a handful of projects in Shane's budget to move forward and finance them. And so I thought that mechanism, if you will, might be better for the county. So we're only drawing, you've got, 4 or 5 projects. They're all going to have different timelines. I think their minimum is $1 million, so it's not something we've ever used for like a ambulance or something like that. Now, she did say, like if we were gonna get 3 new ambulances at one time, for example, and if it was over $1 million, we could use that. But we haven't done that. We've typically just used our local banks for that. But we are in, and I met with her on the phone or on a Teams call. They're looking at our audit. They're looking at all our financing. They're looking at all of our finances right now. We sent her the list of what you approved, and we're waiting to hear back some details. And so once we hear back from her, we'll bring that mechanism back to you to approve formally, and we'll be able to move forward with the projects. And so I think that And it's like a year-to-year thing, and it'll roll, you know, basically what you get approved for and what you don't use and so forth. But it's a way to only pay interest on at the point in time we need the draw, for example, to save the most dollars.
And we did do core bores on the roads. We know exactly how much asphalt we need to mill off that road and Old County Road 78. So those were completed prior to the budget cycle ending. So we know that.
That's all I had from you, just FYI. I'm not sure if everyone aware the Harlem Garden is up for sale. I did reach out to Senator Scott's office because it's part of HUD to see if they was to sell it, where do those funds go? And it's 125 units, if I'm correct, and that means all those people there will be displaced. So, you know, anything that you could do, anyone you can reach out, we just need, that's a lot of people to be displaced. I'm not sure if all the units are full. I did reach out to Commissioner, to Ms. Taylor to see if, you know, what they plans was, but she did not respond. But I did reach out to the gentleman, the realtor. He's the vice president of the organization, and all I know is it's up for 10.2 million, and that's all the information I got. But just wanted to make sure that you all was aware that it is up for sale. And appreciate the county looking out for a family that got burnt out the other day. I think she have 11 kids. So, but they are working with her to get her situated. So other than that, thank you.